The afternoon sun beat down on the dusty highway as Jack Reynolds pulled his old pickup truck into the gravel parking lot of Clara's roadside diner. The small building stood like an island of comfort on the outskirts of Pine Creek, the same town where Jack had grown up before joining the Navy 16 years ago. He was finally home on leave after his 6th deployment, looking forward to some peace and quiet. Jack stepped out of his truck, his movements smooth and deliberate. At 38, he didn't look like someone special at first glance. Average height, trim build, short brown hair starting to gray at the temples. The only hints of his military background were his perfect posture and the watchful look in his deep-set eyes that never seemed to miss anything. Just 3 weeks of normal life, he muttered to himself as he walked toward the diner's entrance. No missions, no training drills, no life-or-death decisions. Just home-cooked meals and catching up with old friends. The bell above the door jingled as Jack stepped inside. The diner looked exactly as he remembered it. Red vinyl booths lining the windows, a long counter with spinning stools, and the smell of coffee and apple pie filling the air. It was like stepping back in time. "Take any seat you like, hun," called a young waitress from behind the counter. Jack nodded and chose a booth in the corner, where he could see both the entrance and the back door. Old habits died hard. As he settled in, Jack noticed a framed newspaper article on the wall next to him. It showed a much younger version of Bill Henderson, the diner's owner, standing proudly in front of the newly opened Clara's Diner, named after his late wife. That was over 40 years ago. The same waitress approached with a menu and a warm smile. "Hi there. I'm Lily, Bill's granddaughter. Haven't seen you around before. Just passing through?" Jack returned the smile. "Actually, I grew up here." Jack Reynolds. "I've been away for a while." Recognition lit up her eyes. "Oh, you're Helen Reynolds's boy. Grandpa mentioned you joined the military. Navy, right?" Jack nodded, not mentioning his role in the SEALs. Most people back home just knew he was in the Navy, and he preferred to keep it that way. He wasn't one to brag about his service or the medals locked away in his footlocker. "Well, welcome home," Lily said, her smile genuine. "What can I get you?" "Coffee, black, and whatever Bill's special is today." "Coming right up." Lily headed back to the kitchen, leaving Jack to soak in the peaceful atmosphere of the diner. There were only a few other customers, an elderly couple sharing a slice of pie, a truck driver hunched over a plate of eggs despite the afternoon hour, and a businessman typing away on his laptop. Normal people with normal lives. Jack felt a familiar twinge of disconnection, the same feeling he got every time he came home on leave. After what he'd seen and done, ordinary life sometimes felt like watching a movie from the outside. The peaceful scene was shattered by the roar of motorcycle engines. 5 bikes pulled into the parking lot, their riders clad in black leather vests emblazoned with a skull and wings logo. Jack watched through the window as they dismounted, laughing loudly and shoving each other. Something about their manner put him on alert. The way they moved, the way they scanned the diner before entering. They weren't just regular bikers out for a ride. The bell jangled harshly as they pushed through the door. The atmosphere in the diner instantly changed. Like the air before a storm, conversation stopped. The elderly couple hunched closer together. The truck driver straightened in his seat. Jack kept his eyes on his coffee cup but tracked the bikers in his peripheral vision as they claimed the largest booth, spreading out as if to take up as much space as possible. Their leader, a hulking man with a shaved head and a thick beard, rapped his knuckles on the table. "Service," he bellowed, making Lily jump behind the counter. She approached their table with a nervous smile. "Welcome to Clara's. What can I get for you, gentlemen?" The leader grabbed her wrist. "How about a smile that doesn't look like you're about to cry, sweetheart?" Jack's hand tightened around his coffee cup. He forced himself to stay seated. Not his business. Not yet. The diner's back door swung open and Bill Henderson emerged from the kitchen. At 72, he was still sturdy, with thick white hair and the strong hands of a man who'd worked hard his whole life. "Let go of my granddaughter," he said, his voice steady despite the tension visible in his shoulders. The biker released Lily's wrist but smirked at Bill. "Just being friendly, old man. We don't want any trouble," Bill said. "You're welcome to eat here, but I expect you to treat my staff with respect." The leader stood up slowly, towering over Bill, the patches on his vest identified him as Crusher, president of the Iron Vultures Motorcycle Club. Jack had never heard of them before. They must be new to the area. That sounds like you're telling me what to do, Crusher said, poking Bill in the chest. Nobody tells me what to do. Jack noticed the other customers sliding out of their booths, quietly heading for the door. The businessman left cash on his table and hurried out without looking back. The elderly couple followed, the husband supporting his wife as they shuffled past the bikers. Only the truck driver remained, watching the scene unfold with wary eyes. "This is my place," Bill said, standing his ground despite being outweighed by at least 100 pounds. "And in my place, everyone shows respect." One of the other bikers, a lanky man with greasy hair and a patchy beard, laughed. "Heard you've been refusing to pay your dues, old-timer." Jack's ears perked up at that. Protection money. So that's what this was about. "I don't owe you anything," Bill said. "I've run this diner honestly for 40 years without paying a cent to thugs." Crusher's face darkened. "New management in town now. Every business on this stretch pays for protection. 20% of your weekly take keeps bad things from happening." He picked up a salt shaker and deliberately dropped it on the floor, where it shattered. "Oops, accidents happen." Lily stepped forward. "Please leave. We're calling the police." The biker who'd spoken earlier grabbed her arm. "No, you're not, princess." That was when Jack decided he'd seen enough. He slid out of his booth and walked toward the counter, deliberately keeping his movements casual. He placed his half-empty coffee cup down and caught Bill's eye. "Everything okay here, Mr. Henderson?" he asked. Crusher turned to face Jack, sizing him up with a dismissive glance. "Mind your own business, buddy. This is between us and the old man." Jack didn't look intimidating in his faded jeans and plain blue t-shirt. Nothing about him screamed danger. Nothing except his eyes, which had gone completely cold and focused. "I'm making it my business," Jack said quietly. The biker holding Lily's arm laughed. "Look at this hero. What are you gonna do, call your mommy?" Jack didn't respond to the taunt. Instead, he addressed Bill directly. "Mr. Henderson, why don't you and Lily go into the back for a minute? I'd like to talk to these gentlemen." Bill hesitated, clearly worried about leaving Jack alone with the bikers. "Jack, there's 5 of them." A small smile touched Jack's lips. "I know, it's fine." Something in Jack's tone made Bill pause. He studied Jack's face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Come on, Lily. Let's give them some space." "But Grandpa," Lily protested. "It's okay," Bill assured her, gently pulling her toward the kitchen. "Jack can handle himself." As they disappeared into the back, the truck driver also stood up. "I'm heading out," he announced, but instead of leaving, he positioned himself near the door, arms crossed. Jack gave him a slight nod of acknowledgement. Crusher laughed, the sound echoing in the now empty diner. "Well, well, looks like it's just us now, tough guy. You really think you can take all of us?" Jack shrugged. "I'd rather not. Why don't you just leave? The old man's not going to pay you, and causing trouble here will only bring heat you don't need." "Heat," another biker snorted. "You mean those useless cops? They know better than to mess with the iron vultures." Jack noticed the patches on their vests, not just the club logo, but others that told a story. Some had prison tags. One had a 1% diamond, marking him as an outlaw. These weren't weekend riders playing dress-up. They were the real deal. Criminals using a motorcycle club as cover. "Last chance," Jack said quietly. "Walk away, find somewhere else to run your scam." Crusher stepped closer until he was looming over Jack. Up close. His size was even more impressive, 6'4" and built like a bulldozer, with tattoos covering every visible inch of skin except his face. "You've got no idea who you're messing with," he growled. Jack met his gaze steadily. "Neither do you." For just a moment, something flickered in Crusher's eyes, a primitive recognition of danger, like a predator sensing a bigger threat. But it passed quickly, replaced by anger at being challenged in front of his crew. Outside, the rumble of more motorcycles filled the air as 3 additional bikes pulled into the parking lot. Through the window, Jack could see the reinforcements arriving, bringing the total to 8 bikers. The odds were getting worse. The truck driver by the door shifted nervously. "Hey man, maybe we should call the cops after all." Jack shook his head slightly. No need yet. He hadn't come home looking for trouble, but he'd found it anyway. Some things, it seemed, didn't change whether you were in a war zone or a small-town diner. As the door opened and the new arrivals stepped in, Jack took a deep breath. His leave had just gotten a lot more complicated. The 3 new bikers who entered the diner sized up the situation quickly. They were cut from the same cloth as the others. Leather vests with the Iron Vulture's insignia, heavy boots, and an air of menace that seemed to fill the room. One of them, a wiry man with a scraggly red beard, whistled low. "What's going on, Crusher? This guy giving you trouble?" He jerked his thumb toward Jack, who remained perfectly still, his posture relaxed but alert. Crusher's lip curled into a sneer. "Just some local hero who thinks he can tell us what to do. Don't worry, we're about to teach him some manners." Jack kept his breathing steady, his mind clear. 8 against 1. He'd faced worse odds, but never during what was supposed to be a peaceful lunch in his hometown. He noticed the truck driver by the door looking increasingly nervous. "Look, I don't want any part of this," the truck driver said, edging toward the exit. "I'm just passing through." One of the bikers blocked his path. "Sit back down. Nobody's leaving until we're done here." The truck driver hesitated, then reluctantly returned to his seat. Jack caught his eye and gave him a small nod that said, "It's okay." "Let him go," Jack said quietly. "This doesn't involve him." Crusher laughed, the sound harsh in the tense silence of the diner. "Suddenly you're calling the shots? I don't think you understand the situation, friend." He cracked his knuckles for emphasis. "See, we run things around here now. Every business on this stretch of highway pays us for protection. Old man Henderson thinks he's special, thinks he doesn't have to pay like everyone else." "Sounds like extortion to me," Jack replied evenly. "Call it what you want." Crusher shrugged his massive shoulders. "It's just business. And right now you're bad for business." Jack glanced around the diner at the family photos on the walls. The hand-painted sign advertising Bill's famous apple pie. The worn counter where generations of locals had gathered for coffee and conversation. This place meant something. It wasn't just a building. It was part of the community, part of his childhood. "Here's what's going to happen," Jack said, his voice quiet but firm. "You and your friends are going to leave. You're not going to bother Mr. Henderson or anyone else in this town again. Find somewhere else to run your operation." The bikers exchanged glances, then burst into laughter. "You hear this guy?" The red-bearded biker chortled. "What do you think you are, some kind of cop?" "No," Jack said simply. "I'm just someone who doesn't like bullies." Crusher's amusement faded, replaced by a cold anger. He took a step closer to Jack, using his height advantage to loom over him. "I've dealt with tough guys like you before," he growled. "They all bleed the same." Jack didn't back away. He stood his ground, looking up at Crusher with a calm that seemed to unnerve the bigger man slightly. "Last chance," Jack said quietly. "Walk away." In the kitchen, Lily peered through the small round window in the swinging door, her face pale with worry. Behind her, Bill was on the phone, speaking in urgent whispers. Crusher signaled to his crew with a slight nod. 2 of them moved to flank Jack while the others spread out, blocking any possible escape routes. "No, friend," Crusher said, his voice dropping to a menacing rumble. "This is your last chance. Get on your knees, apologize for disrespecting us, and maybe, just maybe, we'll let you crawl out of here without too many broken bones." Jack sighed, almost imperceptibly. He'd hoped to avoid this, but some people couldn't be reasoned with. His mind shifted gears, moving from de-escalation to tactical assessment. 8 opponents. Confined space. Civilians nearby who could get hurt. Not ideal, but he'd worked with worse. "I'm not going to kneel," Jack said. "And I'm not going to fight you if I don't have to." "Oh, you don't have a choice about the fighting part," Crusher sneered, and threw a massive haymaker punch aimed at Jack's head. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion for everyone watching. Jack moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for someone his size. He didn't just dodge the punch. He seemed to flow around it, redirecting Crusher's momentum with a slight shift of his body. Before anyone could register what had happened, Crusher was stumbling forward, off balance and vulnerable. Jack didn't press the advantage. He stepped back, hands still not raised in a fighting stance. "Don't do this," he warned. Crusher's face flushed with rage. He wasn't used to missing. "Get him!" he barked to his crew. 2 bikers rushed Jack from different angles, a coordinated attack that would have overwhelmed most men. But Jack wasn't most men. 16 years as a Navy SEAL had honed his reflexes and combat awareness to a razor's edge. He sidestepped the first attacker, using the man's momentum to send him crashing into a table. The second came in low, attempting to tackle Jack around the waist. Jack pivoted at the last second, bringing his knee up in a controlled strike that caught the biker in the solar plexus. The man dropped to the floor, gasping for breath. "What the hell?" the red-bearded biker muttered, his cockiness evaporating as he watched his friends taken down with such apparent ease. Jack still hadn't thrown a single punch. His movements were purely defensive, designed to neutralize rather than harm. But the message was clear. He was not someone to be trifled with. Crusher, however, wasn't deterred. If anything, the initial failure only fueled his rage. He grabbed a chair and hurled it at Jack, who ducked smoothly. The chair crashed into the counter, sending coffee cups and plates shattering to the floor. "You're paying for that," Jack commented dryly. 3 more bikers moved in together, thinking their numbers would overwhelm him. Jack's expression changed slightly. Not fear, but a kind of focused intensity that transformed his entire demeanor. He moved with precision that spoke of years of training and real-world experience. The first biker swung a chain. Jack caught it mid-swing, yanked it forward, and used the man's own momentum to flip him over the counter. The second pulled a knife, its blade glinting under the diner lights. Jack disarmed him with a lightning-fast strike to the wrist, followed by a sweep of the legs that sent the man sprawling. The third managed to land a glancing blow to Jack's shoulder before finding himself pinned against the wall, arm twisted behind his back at an angle that promised excruciating pain if he moved. "Stay down," Jack advised quietly, before releasing him and stepping back. 4 down, 4 to go. The remaining bikers were no longer advancing confidently. Something had changed in their assessment of the situation. They were looking at Jack differently now, with the dawning realization that they had severely underestimated their opponent. "Who the hell are you?" the red-bearded biker asked, his hand hovering near his belt where Jack suspected he had a weapon concealed. "Just a guy trying to have lunch," Jack replied. "I told you to leave. That offer's still open." From the kitchen, Bill's voice called out, "Police are on their way, Jack." "Hang on!" Crusher spat on the floor. "Police won't get here for at least 15 minutes. Plenty of time to finish this." But his voice lacked its earlier conviction. The truck driver, who had been watching the scene unfold with wide eyes, suddenly stood up. I was a Marine, infantry. Not much compared to whatever you are, buddy, but..." He moved to stand beside Jack. 2 against 6 is better odds." Jack gave him a small nod of appreciation. "Thanks, but stay back unless you have to jump in. I don't want anyone getting hurt who doesn't need to." Crusher pulled something from his back pocket, brass knuckles that glinted dully as he slipped them onto his massive fist. "You've made a big mistake," he growled. "Nobody embarrasses the Iron Vultures." "You're doing a pretty good job of that yourselves," Jack observed. Crusher charged like an enraged bull. This time Jack didn't just evade. He met the attack head-on, blocking the brass-knuckled fist with a forearm movement that seemed to absorb the impact impossibly well. His counter-strike was so fast it was almost invisible. A precise hit to Crusher's solar plexus that folded the bigger man in half, followed by a sweeping leg movement that took Crusher's feet from under him. The biker leader crashed to the floor with an impact that shook the diner's windows. He tried to rise only to find Jack's foot placed lightly but firmly on his chest. "Stay down," Jack advised. "It's over." The remaining bikers looked at their fallen leader, then at each other. The calculus had changed dramatically. What had seemed like an easy intimidation job had turned into something none of them had signed up for. Redbeard pulled a switchblade from his pocket. The blade snapped open with a click that seemed unnaturally loud in the tense silence. "It's not over until we say it's over," he snarled. But his voice wavered slightly. Jack's eyes flicked to the knife, then back to Redbeard's face. Something in that gaze, a complete absence of fear, a readiness that went beyond confidence into absolute certainty, made the biker hesitate. "Your choice," Jack said softly. "But I should warn you, I'm starting to lose my patience." Through the window, the flash of red and blue lights became visible as a police car pulled into the parking lot. It was earlier than expected. Someone must have called before Bill did. Redbeard glanced at the approaching police, then at his fallen comrades and finally at Jack, who still stood calmly with one foot restraining their leader. He closed the switchblade and pocketed it. "This isn't over," he said, but it sounded hollow even to his own ears. Jack didn't respond. He kept his attention on Crusher, who had stopped struggling and now lay still, his breathing heavy. The diner's door opened and 2 police officers entered, hands on their holstered weapons as they took in the scene. Overturned tables, broken dishes, and several groaning bikers sprawled across the floor. "What's going on here?" the lead officer demanded. Before Jack could answer, Bill emerged from the kitchen, Lily close behind him. "Officer Dan," Bill called out, relief evident in his voice. "Thank goodness you're here. These men came in demanding protection money. They threatened us. If it wasn't for Jack here." He gestured toward Jack with something like awe in his expression. Officer Dan looked at Jack with newfound interest. "Jack Reynolds? Helen's boy? Haven't seen you around for years." Jack nodded slightly. "Just home on leave." The officer surveyed the scene again, taking in the defeated bikers and the minimal damage to Jack himself. His eyebrows rose slightly. "Well," he said, "looks like these fellows picked the wrong diner to shake down." He turned to his partner. "Call for backup. We're going to need to take statements and sort this mess out." As the officers began securing the scene, Lily approached Jack with a look of amazement. "That was... I've never seen anything like that," she said. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Jack gave her a small, tired smile. "Navy teaches you a few things." Bill clapped a hand on Jack's shoulder. "A few things? Son, I think there's a story here you haven't been telling us." From his position on the floor, Crusher glared up at Jack with a mixture of hatred and grudging respect. "This isn't finished," he muttered. "The Iron Vultures don't forget." Jack met his gaze steadily. "Neither do I," he replied quietly. "Remember that before you come back to this town." As more police cars pulled into the parking lot, Jack knew his peaceful leave had just become considerably more complicated. But looking at Bill and Lily's relieved faces, he couldn't bring himself to regret stepping in. Some fights were worth having, even when you weren't looking for trouble. The truck driver approached, extending his hand. "Dave Wilson. Like I said, former Marine. That was some impressive work." "You're not just Navy, are you?" Jack hesitated, then shook the offered hand. "Jack Reynolds. And no, not just Navy." "Figured as much." Dave nodded knowingly. "Well, whoever you are, I'm glad you were here today." Jack glanced around the diner at the place that had been part of his childhood, at the people who represented the community he'd grown up in, the home he'd always defended from afar. For the first time since returning on leave, he felt a genuine connection to his roots. "Yeah," he said quietly, "so am I." The Pine Creek police station was busier than Jack had ever seen it. Then again, he hadn't been inside since he was 17, when Officer Dan had caught him and his friends swimming in the old quarry after dark. Back then, the worst trouble in town had been teenage mischief and the occasional drunk driver. Now the small station buzzed with activity as officers processed the 6 bikers they'd managed to arrest. 2 others had escaped in the confusion, including Redbeard, who Jack suspected was second in command. Crusher, whose real name turned out to be Frank Doherty, sat handcuffed to a bench, glaring at Jack with undisguised hatred. "Reynolds," Chief Morris called from his office doorway. "Got a minute?" Jack nodded and followed the police chief inside. Tom Morris had been a rookie officer when Jack was a kid. Now his hair was salt and pepper, and the responsibilities of keeping Pine Creek safe had etched permanent lines around his eyes. "Have a seat," Morris said, gesturing to a chair across from his cluttered desk. "Quite a mess you stepped into today." Jack sat down. "Didn't plan on it, Chief. Never do we?" Morris shuffled some papers. "I've got 8 statements saying these Iron Vultures came in looking for trouble and you defended yourself and others. Open and shut case of self-defense far as I'm concerned." "Appreciate that," Jack said. Morris leaned back in his chair. "The thing is, these boys aren't just some random troublemakers. The Iron Vultures have been moving into small towns all along the interstate for the past year. They start with protection rackets, then graduate to drug distribution, weapons, you name it." Jack's face remained impassive, but his mind was working. "You're saying this isn't over?" "Their club president is a guy named Victor Crane, ex-military himself, dishonorable discharge. Mean piece of work. Word is he doesn't take kindly to people messing with his operations." Morris tapped a pen against his desk. "Frank Doherty out there is his enforcer, sent to establish their presence here. And I just embarrassed him in front of his crew," Jack finished. "Exactly." Morris sighed. "Look, son, what you did was brave. Bill Henderson's an institution in this town, and Lord knows we've been trying to keep these vultures out. But I'm worried about retaliation. These guys hold grudges." Jack nodded slowly. "How many officers do you have, Chief?" 8 full-time, 4 part-time. Small department for a small town." Morris's expression was grim. State police can lend support, but they're stretched thin. Truth is, we're outmanned if the vultures decide to make an example of Pine Creek. Outside the office, the station door opened, and Jack turned to see Bill and Lily Henderson enter. They spotted him through the glass and waved. Bill's face was a mixture of concern and determination. "The Hendersons want to press charges," Morris said, following Jack's gaze. "So do the other businesses these guys have been squeezing. With your testimony, we can put Doherty away for a good while. But not the whole club," Jack pointed out. "No, not the whole club." Morris rubbed his forehead. "Your leave is what, 3 weeks? Any chance you can cut it short, head back to base? Might be safer for everyone." Jack thought about it. Running wasn't his style, but putting his family and the town at risk wasn't an option either. His mother still lived on the edge of town in the house where he grew up. "I'll think about it," he said finally. Morris nodded. "That's all I can ask. In the meantime, we'll keep an eye on things. I've already sent a patrol car to drive by your mom's place regularly." Jack stood up. "Thanks, Chief. I'll give my statement to whoever's handling the paperwork. Officer Reyes at the front desk will take care of you." Morris extended his hand. "For what it's worth, what you did today? Pretty impressive. Bill says you took down 6 bikers without breaking a sweat." Jack shook the offered hand. "Got lucky," Morris smiled knowingly. "Navy training must be something these days." Jack left without correcting him. His SEAL status wasn't something he advertised, especially not in his hometown. The less people knew about his specialized training, the better. In the main room, Bill spotted him and hurried over. "Jack, they keeping you long?" "Just giving my statement," Jack replied. "You two okay?" Lily joined them, her earlier fear replaced by barely contained excitement. "We're fine. Better than fine. You should have seen Grandpa after you left, telling everyone how you fought off a whole gang single-handedly." Bill had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Well, it was impressive. Where'd you learn to fight like that, son? They teach that in the regular Navy." Before Jack could answer, the station door burst open. Dave Wilson, the truck driver who had offered to help during the confrontation, rushed in, his face flushed. "They're back," he panted. "The bikers, a whole bunch of them. At least 20 bikes just rolled into town." Chief Morris emerged from his office, instantly alert. "Where?" "Main Street. They've got bats' chains. Some have guns, I think." Dave ran a hand through his hair. "I was at the gas station when they rode past. They were headed toward the diner." Morris immediately began barking orders. "Reyes, call everyone in. Johnson, get on the radio to state police. Tell them we need backup now." He turned to Jack. "I told you they'd retaliate. Just didn't expect it this soon." Jack's mind shifted to tactical mode. "How long until your officers can mobilize?" 10 minutes, maybe 15 to get everyone here and equipped." Morris checked his sidearm. "State police are at least 30 minutes out." "The diner won't be there in 15 minutes, Bill said, his voice shaking. "Clara's picture is there. All our family photos." Jack made his decision. "Chief, I need to borrow a vest if you've got one. And a radio." Morris looked at him sharply. "What are you thinking, Reynolds?" "I'm thinking I can slow them down until your people get there." Jack kept his voice level. "I know how guys like this operate. They're expecting to find a scared old man, not someone who can fight back." "You're talking about facing 20 armed bikers alone," Morris said incredulously. "That's suicide." Dave stepped forward. "Not alone. I meant what I said earlier. I'm a Marine. I've been out for 5 years, but I still remember how to handle myself." Jack assessed the truck driver. He had the solid build of someone who stayed in shape, and his eyes held the steady gaze of a man who had seen combat. "Appreciate it. But this isn't your fight," Jack told him. "Made it my fight when I decided to stick around earlier," Dave replied firmly. "Besides, Marines don't leave Navy behind even if you are some kind of super sailor." Despite the situation, Jack felt a smile tug at his lips. The inter-service rivalry never died, even in civilian life. Morris cursed under his breath. "I can't sanction this. Officially, I mean." "Understood," Jack said. "But we need to move now." The chief hesitated, then nodded. "Locker room, second door on the right. Vests are in the cabinet. Take what you need. Radio frequency is channel 3. He looked between Jack and Dave. "God help you both." As Jack headed for the locker room, Lily caught his arm. "You can't go. It's too dangerous." "Someone has to buy time," Jack said gently. "Your grandfather built that place with his own hands. I'm not letting those thugs destroy it." Bill put an arm around his granddaughter's shoulders. Let him go, Lily. Jack knows what he's doing. He looked at Jack with newfound respect. Always knew there was something special about you, even when you were a scrawny kid stealing apples from my tree. Jack smiled at the memory. Save me a slice of pie for when I get back. In the locker room, Jack quickly donned a tactical vest. It wasn't the specialized gear he was used to, but it would stop most handgun rounds. He checked the radio, clipping it to his belt, then rejoined Dave in the main room. Got a car? Jack asked. Dave nodded. My truck's outside. Good, we'll take that. Jack turned to Morris. Chief, have your officers approach from the south end of Main Street when they arrive. We'll be coming from the north. Morris nodded grimly. Be careful. These aren't just weekend warriors. The Iron Vultures have ex-military among them, guys who brought back bad habits from overseas. So do we, Dave said quietly. As they headed for the door, Jack noticed Crusher watching them from his handcuffed position, a slow smile spreading across his face. They're going to kill you, Crusher called out. Victor doesn't leave witnesses. Jack paused, meeting the biker's gaze. Tell your boss something for me when you see him. Tell him I've fought worse than him in better places than this. Tell him I was trained to win. Something in Jack's tone made Crusher's smirk falter slightly. For the first time, doubt crept into his expression. Outside, Dave led Jack to an old Ford pickup similar to Jack's own. They climbed in and Dave fired up the engine. What's the plan? He asked as they pulled away from the station. Jack checked the vest's straps, making sure it was secure. We observe first. Count how many, what weapons, positions. Then we find their weak point, and then... Jack's expression hardened. Then we remind them why picking this town was their biggest mistake. As they drove toward Main Street, Jack could see smoke rising in the distance. The Vultures had already started their destruction. His mind flashed to Bill's weathered face, to Lily's kind smile, to all the memories of growing up in this town. He had spent his career protecting American interests in distant lands. Now the fight had come to his own backyard. These bikers had no idea what they were up against. They saw a small town with a tiny police force, easy pickings. What they didn't see was the predator in their midst, a man trained in the world's most elite special operations unit. For the first time since coming home on leave, Jack felt the familiar cold focus settling over him, the combat mindset that had kept him alive through 6 deployments. The Iron Vultures were about to learn a painful lesson about choosing their targets more carefully. Ready? Dave asked as they neared Main Street. Jack nodded, his eyes fixed on the smoke ahead. Let's go to work. Main Street and Pine Creek had never seen anything like this. The Iron Vultures had taken over, their motorcycles parked haphazardly along the curb as they strutted down the middle of the road like they owned it. Shopkeepers hurriedly pulled down their shutters. The few pedestrians who had been caught outside scrambled for cover. Jack and Dave left the truck a block away and approached on foot, staying close to the buildings. From their vantage point, Jack counted 23 bikers. Most carried bats or chains, but he spotted at least 5 handguns and what looked like a sawed-off shotgun. This is bad, Dave muttered beside him. They're not even trying to hide their weapons. That means they're not planning to leave witnesses, Jack replied, his voice calm despite the dire assessment. See the guy with the skull bandana? That's their leader. The man Jack indicated stood in front of Clara's diner, gesturing as he gave orders to the others. Unlike Crusher's bulky frame, this man was lean and wiry, with the coiled tension of a snake ready to strike. A nasty scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw. That's Victor Crane? Dave asked. Jack nodded. Has to be. The way the others defer to him, the military bearing. Ex-Special Forces, if I had to guess. Great, Dave said sarcastically. Just what we need. They watched as 2 bikers smashed the diner's windows while others poured some kind of liquid. Gasoline, most likely, around the building's perimeter. They're going to burn it down, Jack said, his jaw tightening. We need to move now. What's the play? We're outnumbered more than 10 to 1. Jack studied the scene, his mind working through scenarios with the rapid efficiency that had been drilled into him through years of training and combat. We're not going to take them all head on, he said finally. That would be suicide. We need to disrupt their operation, create confusion, then pick them off in smaller groups. Jack pulled out the police radio. Chief, it's Reynolds. They're at the diner, about to torch it. 20+ hostiles, multiple firearms. We need your people here 5 minutes ago. Morris's voice crackled back, strained but determined. On our way. 5 minutes out, maybe less. State police are en route too. Copy that. We're going to engage, try to slow them down. Reynolds, wait for backup. Jack clicked off the radio and turned to Dave. Time to make some noise. They moved quickly to Dave's truck. Jack rummaged in the back and found a tire iron and some road flares. Perfect, he said, grabbing them. Got anything else useful? Dave reached under the seat and pulled out a large hunting knife in a leather sheath. Never leave home without it. Jack nodded approvingly. We'll split up. I'll create a diversion on the far side of the diner. When they move to investigate, you take out the ones watching the front. Silent takedowns only. We don't want to start a gunfight in the middle of town. What kind of diversion? Jack held up the road flares. The loud, bright kind. They circled around to approach from different directions. Jack moved through the back alleys with the silent efficiency that had made him such an effective SEAL. His senses were fully alert, cataloging every sound and movement. This wasn't the mountains of Afghanistan or the deserts of Iraq. But the tactical principles remained the same. Know your terrain, know your enemy. Use their expectations against them. He reached the delivery alley behind the diner just as one of the bikers emerged from the back door. Arms full of liquor bottles from Bill's small bar, the biker never saw Jack coming. A quick strike to the throat silenced him before he could cry out, followed by a precise blow to the temple that sent him crumpling to the ground, unconscious but alive. Jack dragged him behind a dumpster and secured him with his own belt. 1 down. 22 to go. Jack spotted 3 more bikers at the far end of the alley, setting up gasoline-soaked rags around the diner's gas meter. If they ignited that, the whole building would go up in seconds. Time for the diversion. Jack struck a flare and tossed it onto the roof of the vacant hardware store across the street. The magnesium flame caught immediately, burning with an intense, eye-searing brightness. A second flare followed, landing near a stack of empty cardboard boxes which began to smolder. The effect was immediate. Shouts of alarm went up from the bikers, and Jack saw several of them, including Victor Crane, rushing toward the new threat. Fire. Someone setting fires, one of them yelled. The 3 bikers by the gas meter hesitated, looking to each other for direction. Keep going, one finally decided. We'll finish here and join the others. That was all Jack needed to hear. He moved in, swift and silent as a shadow. The first biker went down with a precisely delivered elbow strike to the base of the skull. The second managed to turn, eyes widening in recognition. You, he gasped, reaching for a knife on his belt. Jack caught the wrist before the blade cleared its sheath, twisting until he heard a pop and a howl of pain. A follow-up strike silenced the cry. The third biker tried to run, but Jack caught him in 3 quick strides, taking him down with a sweeping leg kick that sent him face first into the gravel. Stay down if you want to keep breathing, Jack advised, his voice deadly calm as he applied just enough pressure to the man's windpipe to make his point. The biker's eyes bulged, but he stopped struggling. Smart choice, Jack said, using the man's bandana to bind his hands before knocking him unconscious with a controlled blow. On the other side of the diner, Dave was having similar success. Jack could see him through a broken window, having already neutralized 2 bikers and now engaged with a third. The Marine might not have Jack's specialized training, but he was holding his own. Jack moved toward the front of the diner, keeping to the shadows. The scene on Main Street had devolved into chaos. Half the bikers were rushing toward the hardware store, while others milled around in confusion, awaiting orders. Victor Crane stood in the center of the street, his face contorted with rage as he shouted commands. Find whoever's doing this. Shoot on sight. The rest of you, finish the diner now. Jack spotted Redbeard from earlier, now sporting a nasty bruise on his face, heading back toward the diner with a gas can in one hand and a lighter in the other. Jack timed his approach perfectly, stepping out from between 2 parked cars just as Redbeard passed. The biker had no time to react before Jack's hand clamped over his mouth, dragging him into the narrow gap. A short controlled struggle later, and another iron vulture was out of commission. Reynolds. Dave's urgent whisper came from nearby. We've got a problem. Jack turned to see Dave crouch behind a mailbox pointing toward the diner's entrance. Victor Crane had returned and was staring directly at the unconscious bodies of the bikers they'd taken down. Someone's here, Crane called out, his voice carrying an authority that instantly commanded attention. Spread out, find them. The remaining bikers immediately formed a search pattern, weapons raised. Their earlier disorganization vanished, replaced by disciplined movement that confirmed Jack's suspicion about Crane's military background. "They're too organized," Dave muttered. "These aren't just thugs." "No," Jack agreed. "But they're still amateurs compared to what we've faced." The wail of police sirens in the distance caught everyone's attention. Some of the bikers looked nervous, glancing toward their motorcycles. "Hold your positions," Crane ordered. "Small-town cops aren't a threat. We finish the job, then leave." Jack knew it was time to change tactics. With the police minutes away, they needed to disrupt the bikers' plans completely, not just delay them. "New plan," he told Dave. "We're going to confront Crane directly." Dave looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Just the two of us. Against all of them? We don't need to beat them all. Just their leader." Jack checked the straps on his borrowed police vest. Men like Crane rule by fear and perceived strength. Break that perception, and his control shatters. Before Dave could protest further, Jack stepped out into the open, walking calmly toward the center of the street where Crane stood. "Victor Crane," he called out, his voice carrying the same commanding presence he'd used to lead men in combat. "That's enough," every head turned. For a moment, the only sound was the distant approach of sirens. Crane's eyes narrowed as he studied Jack, recognition dawning on his scarred face. "So you're the one who took down Crusher?" he said, his voice surprisingly soft. "Doesn't matter. You're just one man." "Two," Dave corrected, stepping out to stand beside Jack. Crane's lips curved in a cold smile. "Still lousy odds." He signaled to his men, who began to form a loose circle around them, weapons ready. "Last chance to walk away," Jack offered. "Police are almost here." "This ends now, one way or another." "Oh, I think we have time for a quick lesson before they arrive," Crane said, drawing a wicked-looking combat knife from his belt. The blade caught the sunlight, revealing notches carved into its edge. "Army Rangers, 3rd Battalion," he added with a twisted pride. "Before they kicked me out." "What about you, Marine? Regular Army?" "Does it matter?" Jack asked. Crane shrugged. "Guess not. Dead is dead." He lunged forward with surprising speed, the knife slashing in a practiced arc that would have opened Jack's throat if it had connected. But Jack wasn't there anymore. He sidestepped with fluid grace, catching Crane's knife arm and using the man's momentum to send him stumbling forward. Crane recovered quickly, spinning back with a backhand strike that showed his training. Jack blocked it, delivering a short, powerful counter to Crane's ribs that drew a grunt of pain. "Get them!" Crane shouted to his men, who had been watching the exchange with surprise. The circle of bikers tightened. Dave positioned himself back-to-back with Jack, fists raised. "Ready for this?" Jack asked over his shoulder. "Like old times," Dave replied, though they both knew they'd never fought together before. But there was a brotherhood among veterans that transcended personal history, a shared understanding of what it meant to stand your ground against the odds. As the first bikers moved in, the sound of screeching tires filled the air. Police cruisers appeared at both ends of the street, officers spilling out with weapons drawn. "Police, drop your weapons." Chief Morris's voice boomed through a megaphone. Some of the bikers immediately obeyed, raising their hands. Others hesitated, looking to Crane for direction. A few broke for their motorcycles. Crane saw his advantage slipping away. With a snarl of fury, he charged at Jack, knife leading the way. This time, Jack didn't just evade. He met the attack head-on, deflecting the blade and countering with a devastating combination of strikes that sent Crane reeling backward. The biker leader crashed into a parked car, blood streaming from his nose. His eyes widened in shock, not just at the pain, but at the realization that he was outmatched. "Who the hell are you?" he gasped. Jack stood over him, not even breathing hard. "Just a guy on vacation." All around them, police officers were taking control, cuffing bikers who surrendered and chasing down those who tried to flee. The Iron Vulture's reign of terror in Pine Creek was ending as quickly as it had begun. Dave joined Jack, sporting a split lip, but looking satisfied. Not bad for an afternoon's work. Jack nodded, scanning the scene to make sure there were no further threats. His eyes fell on Clara's diner, still standing despite the broken windows and graffiti. Bill Henderson stood in the doorway, surveying the damage with Lily beside him. When he spotted Jack, the old man raised a hand in grateful acknowledgement. Chief Morris approached, holstering his weapon. "You two couldn't wait for backup, could you?" "Didn't seem like the diner could either," Jack replied. Morris shook his head, but there was grudging respect in his expression. 8 bikers down before we even arrived. Want to tell me how you managed that? Jack and Dave exchanged a look. Just got lucky, Jack said. Right, Morris said skeptically. Well, however you did it, Pine Creek owes you both. The state police just picked up another dozen vultures trying to flee on the highway. Between those and the ones we've got here, I'd say their club just lost most of its membership. As the police led Crane away in handcuffs, the biker leader twisted to look back at Jack, his eyes burning with hatred. This isn't over, he called out. You hear me? This isn't over. Jack watched him go, his face expressionless. Yeah, he said quietly. I think it is. But even as he said it, he wondered if that was true. Men like Crane didn't forget, and they didn't forgive. For now, though, the town was safe, and that was enough for today. 3 days had passed since the showdown on Main Street. The news had spread quickly through Pine Creek and the surrounding towns, how a biker gang had tried to burn down Clara's diner, and how they'd been stopped by a hometown hero and his newfound ally. The story grew with each telling, until Jack could barely recognize his own actions in the excited whispers that followed him around town. The diner itself was already coming back to life. The broken windows had been replaced, the graffiti scrubbed away. Bill Henderson had reopened for business the very next day, declaring that no bunch of leather-wearing troublemakers would keep him from serving the best apple pie in the county. Jack sat in his usual corner booth, nursing a cup of black coffee as he watched the diner slowly fill with the lunch crowd. Word had gotten out that he would be there, and it seemed like half the town had found reasons to stop by. You're good for business, Lily said with a smile as she refilled his cup. Grandpa's thinking of putting up a sign, Home of the Navy SEAL's Last Stand. Jack winced. Please tell me he's joking. Mostly, Lily laughed. Though he did order a plaque for that booth you're sitting in. Jack shook his head, but he couldn't help smiling. The people of Pine Creek meant well, even if their enthusiasm made him uncomfortable. He'd never sought recognition for his service, and the attention now felt strange after years of operating in the shadows. The bell above the door jingled, and Dave Wilson walked in. The truck driver had stuck around town, extending his delivery schedule by a few days. He slid into the booth across from Jack. Local celebrity, Dave observed, nodding toward the not-so-subtle glances from the other customers. How's it feel? Weird, Jack admitted. I'm more used to people not knowing I was ever there. Dave nodded in understanding. As a former Marine, he knew something about the strange transition back to civilian life, where the skills that defined you in service suddenly seemed out of place. Heard from the chief this morning, Dave said, accepting a coffee from Lily with a smile of thanks. State police finished processing all the iron vultures they rounded up. 29 arrests total, including our friends Crusher and Crane. Good, Jack said. Any word on the charges? Assault, extortion, attempted arson, weapons violations. They'll be away for a while. Dave stirred sugar into his coffee. Turns out Crane was wanted in 3 states already. The Rangers really teach their people some interesting skills. Jack's expression darkened slightly. The Rangers are a good unit. Crane's the exception, not the rule. Fair enough, Dave acknowledged. Speaking of units, when were you going to mention you're a SEAL? Jack glanced up sharply. Who told you that? Nobody had to tell me. I served with SEAL Team 3 as Joint Ops in Fallujah. I know the moves, the way you handle yourself. Dave leaned forward. Don't worry, I haven't said anything to anyone. Not my story to tell, Jack relaxed slightly. Appreciate that. I don't advertise it. Clearly, Dave said with a hint of amusement. Though you might want to work on your just a regular sailor act. The chief's been Googling Navy Special Operations since the incident. Before Jack could respond, the diner's door opened again and Chief Morris entered, followed by a woman in her 60s with silver-streaked brown hair and familiar eyes. Jack's mother, Helen Reynolds. Jack, Helen called, making her way to his booth. Tom told me I'd find you here. Jack stood to embrace her. Mom, thought you weren't back from Aunt Carol's until tomorrow. Came home early when I heard what happened, Helen said, her eyes searching his face for any sign of injury. My son taking on a whole motorcycle gang. What were you thinking? That I was hungry and someone was threatening my favorite diner, Jack replied with a small smile. Helen shook her head, but pride shone in her eyes. She turned to Dave and extended her hand. You must be Dave. Tom told me you helped Jack. Thank you for watching out for my boy. Dave took her hand, looking slightly embarrassed. "Ma'am, from what I saw, your son doesn't need much watching out for." Chief Morris joined them, sliding into the booth beside Dave. "That's the truth. 29 arrests, no serious injuries except to the bikers, and the Iron Vulture's reputation in tatters." He looked at Jack appraisingly. "The state police captain wants to know if you'd consider a job when you're done with the Navy." Jack shook his head. "Still got a few years left in my contract." "Well, the offer stands." Morris accepted a coffee from Lily. "The DA's moving fast on this one. Preliminary hearings are set for next week." "Will we need to testify?" Dave asked. "Eventually, yes, but not for a while. The iron's hot and they're striking, pardon the pun." Morris took a sip of his coffee. "Which brings me to why I'm here. Got some news you both should know." Jack recognized the shift in the chief's tone. "What kind of news?" Morris glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Victor Crane escaped custody this morning during a prisoner transport. 2 officers injured, 1 critically. He had help, someone on the outside with connections." Helen gasped softly. Jack's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. "Any leads on where he's headed?" Jack asked. "Nothing solid," Morris admitted. "But given his last words to you, I'd say there's a good chance he might circle back this way." Dave let out a low whistle. "So much for wrapping this up neatly. I've got extra patrols out, and the state police are setting up checkpoints on all roads into town," Morris assured them. "But I wanted you both to be on alert. Crane's not just some thug, he's trained, disciplined. And now he's desperate," Jack added. "That makes him more dangerous." Helen touched her son's arm. "Maybe you should come stay at the house until they catch him. Or better yet, head back to base early where it's safe." Jack covered her hand with his own. "Mom, I'm not hiding from this guy. And I'm not cutting my leave short. I've got 2 weeks left and I plan to enjoy them." "Stubborn." "Just like your father," Helen muttered, but there was affection in her voice. The conversation was interrupted by the sudden blare of sirens outside. Everyone in the diner turned toward the windows as 3 police cruisers sped past, heading toward the edge of town. Morris's radio crackled to life. He unclipped it from his belt and listened intently to the dispatcher's voice. "Reports of shots fired at the old mill," he informed them, already standing. "Possible hostage situation." Jack stood as well. "Crane?" "Unknown at this time, but—" Morris was cut off by another radio transmission. His face grew grim as he listened. "Witness reports a man matching Crane's description and—" He hesitated, looking at Bill and Lily, who had joined them. "He's asking for you, Jack, by name." A heavy silence fell over the group. Bill's face paled. "Who's the hostage?" Morris avoided meeting the old man's eyes. "Witness says it's Tom Henderson." "Your son?" Bill staggered slightly and Lily gasped. "Dad? He was just going to check on the mill property. We've been thinking of expanding there." Jack's mind was already racing, calculating angles, approaches, risks. "The old paper mill? On the river?" Morris nodded. "Abandoned for 20 years now. County's been trying to demolish it, but there's always been budget issues." "I know the place," Jack said. "Played there as a kid." He turned to Dave. "You up for one more round?" Dave didn't hesitate. "Lead the way." "Now wait just a minute," Morris protested. "This is a police matter. I can't let you 2 civilians—" "You know we're not just civilians," Jack cut him off. "And you know your department isn't equipped for this. Crane's ex-Rangers. He's got tactical training." "So do I," Morris argued, but his voice lacked conviction. "Different kind," Jack said simply. "Your men aren't trained for hostage extraction. Dave and I are." Morris hesitated, clearly torn between protocol and practicality. Finally, he sighed. "What do you need?" "Transportation to the mill. And any intel you can give us on the layout, though I remember most of it. Have your men establish a perimeter, but stay back. No sirens, no megaphones, no hostage negotiation attempts until we're in position." The chief nodded reluctantly. "I can give you 30 minutes. After that, I have to follow procedure. We'll only need 20, Jack assured him. He turned to his mother, who watched him with worried eyes. "It'll be okay, Mom. This is what I do." Helen straightened her shoulders. "I know, just come back in one piece, understand?" Jack promised with a nod, then turned to Bill and Lily. "We'll get Tom back safely." The ride to the old paper mill was tense and silent. Jack and Dave sat in the back of Morris's unmarked police car, each lost in their own thoughts as they prepared mentally for what lay ahead. "What's your read on Crane?" Dave asked finally, checking the borrowed police vest he wore. Jack stared out the window at the passing trees. Desperate, angry, but still strategic. This isn't a random lashing out, he's planned this. The hostage, the location, asking for me by name. He wants a controlled confrontation on his terms. So we change the terms, Dave concluded. Exactly. Jack turned to him. You don't have to do this, you know. You could be halfway to your next delivery by now. Dave gave him a look. And miss the exciting conclusion? Not a chance. As they approached the mill, Morris pulled over well short of the police barricade that had been established. This is as close as I can take you without being spotted. The mill's about half a mile through those trees. Jack nodded. Perfect. Remember, keep your men back. No heroics. Same goes for you two, Morris replied. I want everyone coming out of this alive. Jack and Dave slipped out of the car and disappeared into the tree line. They moved with practiced stealth, communicating with hand signals as they approached the dilapidated structure of the old paper mill. The main building loomed ahead, a hulking skeleton of rusted metal and crumbling concrete. Jack paused at the edge of the clearing, studying the approach. After a moment, he pointed to a partially collapsed section of the roof, then to a loading dock on the east side. Dave nodded in understanding. They would split up, 2 angles of approach, doubling their chances of success. As they prepared to separate, Dave gripped Jack's shoulder. Hey, see you on the other side. Jack returned the gesture. Count on it. With that, they moved out, each heading toward their designated entry point. Whatever waited inside, whatever trap Crane had set, they would face it together. 2 warriors from different branches of service united by a common purpose. And somewhere in the rusted heart of the old mill, Victor Crane waited, unaware that the prey he thought he was hunting had just become the predator. The final confrontation was about to begin.